today, techniques, the point of techniques is to empower our capacity to like perform meditation. So there is this performance element in our practice. The stillness is one. And as I look at those that have their videos on, it seems like stillness is, becoming more comfortable. Posture is another, but that develops over time as our bodies adapt to the shape that we're holding them in. And yoga poses and stretching and in general sort of like exercise is going to enable that. But the main, and then steady breathing, and that's just really, taking the time to breathe deeply and remembering that a deep breath is fundamental to success within meditation because it relaxes our nerves. But the most trying skill is actually focusing the mind, right? Keeping the mind anchored on one single point. So we're just going to run through an exercise today for about half of the class it won't necessarily help you focus, but it will it'll make your distraction much more obvious and much less satisfying. And in that, hopefully, as it becomes less and less satisfying to be distracted, it will empower you to muster up your willpower to really try to be more focused. But before that, I just like to get into like what is actually going on neurologically when you're experiencing distraction and when you're experiencing what you feel to be focus. So there are two types of focus that arise in the brain, right? And so the brain is distinct from the mind. The mind is the emotional sort of landscape of meanings and perceptions that we sort of live life through and define life as. But the brain is the organ that generates that almost psychedelic reality that all human beings live through. So the brain has two types of focus, many types of focus, but the two we're going to talk about is top-down and bottom-up focus. And so real quick, an explanation of how the brain is structured. The brain can be simplified into three tiers. The bottom tier is the reptilian brain. It's the most archaic and ancient expression of the brain. And we share this part of our brain with reptiles, which is a far descendant from the mammalians, right? All mammals have a certain sort of group of similar qualities because we evolved together, and we evolved from fish and we evolved from reptiles, but we share the reptilian brain with these descendants. And so that is a brain that is designed, our part of our brain that is designed to monitor our body functions and sort of gives rise to deeply embedded instincts. And then on top of that is what's called the mammalian brain, and in that is the limbic system, and this is where our emotions exist. And so I think it's interesting if you're in sort of meditative circles and you get involved in the philosophical discussions, the dichotomy between the brain and the heart. When people are talking about the heart, they're talking about the mammalian brain or the limbic system, which is still here. So our emotions exist in the middle part of our brain. And so all mammals have a mammalian sort of segment to their brain. They all have some form of a limbic system. So all mammals, at the very least, have an emotional undertone to their experience. Just nice to know. So when you look at your puppy or look at your kitten or you look at a squirrel running up and down a tree, it has the software to experience emotions. And then the top part of the brain is the cortex. And this is where we have higher thought, where we develop meaning, we recognize patterns, we project ourselves into the future, we try to sort of understand reality at large through the intellect. So that's the top part of the brain. When we're trying to focus in meditation, which is the main skill, after we get into our stillness, after we get into our posture, and after we're willing to breathe deeply, we're trying to create top-down focus. So from the top part of the brain, the higher thought process, all the way down into the instinctual process of the lower reptilian brain. And so this focus is an expression of higher consciousness, and I think you can all feel that, at least intuitively, that you're working with what you believe you are to control this mind of yours. When you get distracted and you hear something in your mind sort of like without your consent and faster than you could even realize, you're already sort of listening to the birds or listening to, a sound happening around you. This is bottom-up focus. This is the part of your brain, the ancient reptilian part, that is designed to monitor the environment because the environment is dangerous. And so just sort of having this directional and sort of anatomical concept of what one focus is versus the other type of focus, top down versus bottom up, and that one is an expression of sort of inherited instincts, ancient inherited instincts, and the other is an expression of like sort of new personal consciousness, we just start to gain a better idea of what's actually going on, and that hopefully will enable you to play the game of top-down focus, or what the yogis or most people just think of as focus, more skillfully. So that's all I wanted to share. And so when that's happening today, it's like, oh, this is coming from my lower brain and this is coming from my higher mind. What we're going to do today, the technique, is as you meditate, you're going to monitor, as you always are. Am I focused? Am I distracted? Is it top-down focus or is it bottom-up focus? Every time you wander into a thought, every time your reptilian brain commands you to look away from your practice, I want you to open your eyes and bring your hands to heart center. And then you're like, okay, I just lost focus. Now I'm going to close my eyes and resume my practice. And if in half a second you find that you're distracted again, you're going to open your eyes and you're going to bring your hands to heart center. So for 10 minutes, you might just be playing patty cake because you can't sort of initiate top-down focus. But this should sort of catalyze a little bit of restlessness and irritation, which is good. These negative emotions really sort of empower us to work harder. And meditation is certainly a sort of work. But eventually what I would imagine is that you're going to be able to sense when that bottom-up focus is rumbling, almost like a storm system in the distance, and remember to stay focused. And in that, extend your consciousness from where it resides in the top of your brain, sort of symbolically all the way down into the ancient sort of swamps of instinct. Cool. So we're going to do that for about 10-15 minutes, and then we're gonna stop that technique, that exercise, and we'll just sort of meditate in our stillness and in our silence without that particular exercise to disrupt or enable whatever it actually is doing for you. Awesome. Cool. So I haven't thought of a name for this sort of work, but it's definitely going to make your distraction more aggravating, which is a good thing. It'll compel you to really work your top-down focus with a bit more intensity. Awesome. Happy you're all here. Again, let's get into this. Start our week well. Comfortable seated pose. Tilt your hips forward as always. Your posture, especially while seated, is governed by the hips and the angle of the pelvis. Hips tilt forward. In this anterior tilt, the spine lifts. Rest your wrists on your knees. Straighten your arms more than you're used to. If there's still a little bend in your arms and you're resistant to hyperextending, fully extend today. Take out the bend. Spread your fingers wide. Rotate your palms up to the sky. And just take a second to feel the fingertips of your right hand. And so this feeling, buzzing, tingling, this is called sukshma, subtle sensations. I want you to notice as you feel these tingling sensations, these nuances, that it feels nice. It's not like when a fly or mosquito is buzzing in your ear. That is innately aggravating. It's still subtle, but aggravating. These sensations are euphoric. And very quickly bring the first finger or fingers that come to mind to the thumb. And appreciate this hand gesture, which is called a hasta, hand mudra gesture. A hasta mudra, it's an expression of creativity and an expression of human consciousness. That we hold ourselves in symbolic and personally meaningful ways to convey messages, to convey purposes, but underneath it all, just to convey that we are conscious and in some sense of control over ourselves. That's all that represents. Left hand, again, take the time to feel the fingertips. And again, actively notice it feels good. that my existence is by design pleasurable. That's a powerful thought. And then quickly, a random finger to each thumb. The technical value of these mudras, these hand gestures, is that it empowers sensitivity. As one fingertip touches another fingertip, it creates a positive feedback loop through the nerves, and the point of contact is markedly more pronounced. Easy place to keep your mind anchored. Alrighty, now slow down the breath. Feel the intention of stillness. And for the next minute, not too long, let's just play a game regarding our breath. Every inhale and every exhale is slower and longer than the last. And in that you are willing yourself into patience, which is unnatural. Our bodies are by design anxious. Life by design is speedy. And to take the luxury to slow down, to have the luxury of rest, is at least in nature a unique circumstance. And so to willfully construct patience, which leads to calmness, which leads to serenity, is in a symbolic way the willingness to build paradise. Now feel the mind move, right? Perception has a sense of touch. There's an experience of the mind landing on things. Let the mind land on my voice. Just listen. And here it is. Your mind is landing on what I'm saying. Now focus on the tip of your nose and feel perception land on the tip of the nose. And now move down to the center of your throat. Again, feel perception land on the center of the throat. And let's rest in the center of our chest. Slow down the breath. Now try to feel the subtle sensations, the experience of temperature, maybe coolness or heat, the experience of movement, buzzing, currents, tingling, prickling, the sense of mass, maybe it feels dense in the center of your chest, or the experience of space, maybe it feels voluminous, vacant. But stay intent on the center of the chest. Every time your mind wanders, and that's for you to decide. You can be very strict with yourself or more lenient with yourself, but every time you believe your mind has wandered and you were influenced by bottom-up focus, by instinctual focus, I want you to open your eyes and calmly bring your hands to heart center to break the continuity of your practice. And then resume. Wrist back to your knees, random fingers to thumbs, refocus on the center of the chest. And so you might be breaking your practice very frequently, or you might have a lot of control over the mind. Either way, you're going to learn something. And either way, the top-down focus and the bottom-up focus will become more pronounced and obvious to you at the end of this exercise. Timer is going to start now. We're going to do this for 10 minutes. Let's take a deep inhale, initiate. Focus on the center of your chest. Slow, slow exhale. Imagine that you are a rock flung into the ocean. The ambition of the meditator is symbolically to reach the ocean floor, which is called dharmata, the ground of being. Those that have rumoredly touched dharmata, as rocks, they touched the silty floor of the ocean bed, come back up expressing it is uniquely and powerfully blissful. Every time we are pulled up, bottom up focus, we are distracted, we come back to the surface. The game of staying focused on the sensation in the center of our chest is fast. It takes second to second remembrance, a willingness to refresh the understanding that we are controlling ourselves, specifically our minds. Slow down your breath. We're going to stop opening our eyes and bringing our hands to heart center. That exercise is done. Just do your best to extend your will. Become more sensitive to the tugging influence of the mind as it distracts you or tries to distract you. Preemptively feel distraction. And at the same time, be sincerely curious of sukshma, the subtle sensations that are arising in the center of your chest. The greater your curiosity, the more likely you will be naturally entranced by your object of focus. Focus on its pleasantness. Feel its euphoria. Now redirect your attention. Listen to the space. Listen to your room. Listen to your morning. Be careful not to provoke or create happiness, appreciation, gratitude. If it's not there, it's not there. So much of this practice is about learning to recognize objective mentalities, learning to resist or sort of move away from the need to interfere. And as we renounce our ability to control in small ways our world, our personal world, and we let the pieces fall where they may, through experience, through evidence, we find that the world always organizes itself into something worth admiring. And so again, you're not creating happiness, you're not creating gratitude. But I would bet the vestiges of those positive emotions are starting to sprout out of nowhere. Deepen the breath. Let's bring our hands to heart center as an expression of intensified presence and openness. If there is patience in you, observe that patience. If there is gratitude in you, observe that gratitude. If there is compassion, observe compassion. If there is inspiration or excitement, observe inspiration or excitement. Be sensitive to the swelling of positive affect, something like a sun rising at dawn. Now focus more onto what is naturally arising, like someone staring into the sun as it rises. Look into this positive affect. Tada drashtuha svarupe avashtanam. Third Sutra of Patanjali Sutras. Tada drashtuha svarupe avashtanam. Tada, and now. The seer abides in their true nature. Lift your thumb knuckles to third eye center. Focus on the tingling sensation as your thumbs press into the skin of your forehead. This is again called sukshma, and it is the target, the focal point of yogic meditation. Yogic meditation is an embodied practice that tiptoes away from philosophies and away from emotions. The emotions naturally arise, the philosophical insights naturally arise. But heaven is found within the body. Feel the tingling sensation. And notice that you can appreciate it more, the way a geologist can uniquely appreciate rocks. And there's a personal recovering of beauty in that. The whole world might look over the tingling sensations, but you find it beautiful enough to sit with. Why? Tada drashtuha svarupa vashtanam. Why? Because through your practice, you have returned to your true nature, a nature that is curious, patient, open, inspired to connect. Let's take one more inhale. And one more exhale. Release your wrists to your knees. Straighten through the chest. I'm resting in my true nature. Intentfully organized. And as you slowly open your eyes and the world kicks back in, I'm no longer meditating. And immediately that essential nature is shrouded in some way with the mind. Impulse, desire, anxiety, the routine comes back in. You just want to feel that shift, as always. And that by sitting still and really establishing top-down focus, overcoming bottom-up focus, you touch this unique zone of sincerity. And that's something to consider seriously, because you have this experience. It's like, oh, I was willing for a second to feel my thumbs press against my forehead, which is strange enough. And then in that willingness, I actually touched some vestige of meaning. For my finger touching my forehead, I found meaning in that. Why? How could you find, as sort of a rational adult, meaning in you poking yourself in the forehead? Because everything is meaningful, but we forget that when our minds kick back on, when we are no longer svarupa, when we are no longer in our true essence. And so this practice, again, it's like we got to brush our teeth to take the plaque out of our mouths. We have to meditate to take the plaque, the buildup off of our deeper identity. Otherwise, we become ego, sort of self-centered, arrogant fiends. And so this is part of our karma, at least, psychologically. If we don't do something about it, if we don't work to balance the scales and return back to emptiness or essence, whatever these words represent psychologically, then life will impose itself onto us, and we will become harder and more dense and more averse to remaining open, which naturally happens in our bodies as we get older. Our bodies become tighter and tighter and tighter. It also happens to our identities as we get older. This is all psychologically, this has all been analyzed through psychology, through statistics. The identity starts to fossilize as we get older as well, but meditation proves to be a way of keeping the psyche soft and malleable, and in that open to the experience of the world. But what experience of the world? The bliss of the world, which to yogis is the true nature, is dharmata, when the stone touches the bottom of the ocean floor.